So recently, a neighboring town had a stabbing,
Okay.
and within about a 6-hour window, while they were investigating the stabbing, they had a CI that put the suspect who had fled the scene with the weapon at a third-party house, his girlfriend's house. So their chief decided it happened to be in my town where they fled to. So
Okay.
the chief decided to do. They at that time had not had enough time to get a warrant, but they definitely had probable cause that a felony been committed, a violent felony. Tracked him to that house. He went up to the house with several of his officers. His intent was to do a knock and talk,
Mm-hmm.
see if the owner would give consent, and if not, kind of secure the house like we were just talking before, and then go get the warrant.
Mm-hmm.
In the meantime, because of the violence and this guy had already fled once, myself and several other departments surrounded the house, but not on the curtilage. We were in like public places around this building where if he ran, we'd be able to grab him.
Yep.
My chief had a couple problems with this once I briefed him on it. One being that, it's a knock and talk and he was going up to get consent to enter the house. Would that potential show of force be enough to say it was coerced consent? Even though they really wouldn't have seen us, I don't think, unless they looked around their property, the neighboring houses.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. They did, like I said, they didn't have time to get a warrant, although it was a 6-hour investigation. It was fresh pursuit, kind of. They had tracked him to that location. Yeah, I like that. That's what my chief said. He did the handling. I don't know about the fresh pursuit, but it was a continuous part of the investigation.
Okay. I do have I think I have your answer. Let me ask you this. As far as the severity of this crime, how bad are we talking about here?
It was a felony. I mean, the guy was stabbed, I think, several times.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a pretty violent crime.
Was it like a stranger stabbing or
two homeless people in a homeless camp?
Okay, so I'll save my jokes for later. But all right, look, so
I'll say life-threatening injuries. This wasn't just a little nick on the arm.
That's what we're looking for here. I mean,
Yeah.
because I got to tell you, sometimes cops, and I'm not saying you, but some cops will embellish these felonies. Felony hit and run. The guy has a neck injury. He's complaining about his neck, and that is injury, so they call it a felony.
Substantial injury.
Yeah, the courts care about this stuff, right? So the more severe the crime, the more reasonable reactions are likely to be viewed. Mike, why don't you start with,
where do you want to go?
I want you to start with fresh pursuit. What are you looking for fresh pursuit?
All right, so fresh pursuit, and I like your wording in this, Anthony. Still right? I like your wording in this because we talk about hot pursuit and we talk about fresh pursuit. And fresh pursuit is a little more that concept that we're on their trail. We're getting pieces of information. We're working towards furthering the investigation. Now we're finding out, okay, now this guy's at this house over here, but we didn't know it right away. We weren't chasing him right behind and running into the house.
Yep.
But we eventually get to this house where we believe him to be fresh pursuit.
Yep.
But time is a component. Time is a consideration on this when you were using that fresh pursuit idea.
That's right.
You mentioned 6 hours. I think we're kind of out of that realm.
We are out of this realm.
I might not mention. Once he realized that the people might be at this house, he sent an officer to sit on the house and observed it to make sure there were people in there. He didn't know for sure his suspect was in there, but his CI put him in there, and no people were coming and going.
Yeah. Well, here's the other thing. Fresh pursuit is that idea you're hot on their suspect's trail, and hot pursuit is you're hot on their suspect's tail, right? You're actually running after them. But the other thing is hot pursuit always has also an agency requirement. You have a person who there was a case where a person killed a police officer. That guy is obviously highly dangerous, and we don't have time to go to a judge and ask, mother may I. We got to get this guy in custody because he's going to have a shootout with the police if we don't have like the element of surprise and so forth. You have cases where sexual assault suspects where they have DNA evidence on their person. Going back to this person, look, even if it's 6 hours, is definitely pushing it. I do teach. I give cops guidance. I'm like a 2 to 3 hour person. After that, it's probably not really fresh pursuit. There's always exceptions. But the other thing is, where is the exigency? Like, if he's at a friend's house, he's probably not going to kill his friend.
And I think you've got surveillance going on. There's no yelling.
Exactly.
There's no screaming. There's
Right.
no one being stabbed again. There's more to it that's
exactly.
to it.
And so you got nobody in immediate danger. And now the next question, though, Anthony, do you think that we could lose evidence if we don't get him? Like, he's washing his hands of the blood, I guess, and maybe there's blood on him. There could be that factor, right, Anthony?
Right.
And you know, and look, and if it's 6 hours, but it took him 5.5 hours to even get to the location, now you have a half an hour he's actually been inside that home. Maybe he's now washing up. So if you want to go down that road, but if he's been there for 3 hours, Anthony, then that argument is probably lame, right? He's had 3 hours to clean off. He's probably not.
Right.
That's probably so. I don't like it. Now, here's the way to answer this question is this: do you think that as you're walking up to that house, to do the knock and talk, right? You could just barge right in and grab him.
At that point, no.
There you
Okay.
go. There's your answer. You have no exigency.
Yeah.
You have no exigency. So,
But then to the other concern about consent, you know, the intent of the chief was to knock and get consent. Is the presence of I think we had 12 officers in and around the area, several officers armed with rifles. Could that be looked at as non-consensual entering the property? Just so you know, at the end, she opened the door and said, "Yeah, he's here and he's in the car. Get him out of my house."
Yeah, exactly.
So she wouldn't have gone, but we didn't know that at the time.
No, it's a great question, and I do have your answer.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a couple things here. It sounds like, okay, is the chief, like, just say if the chief's saying, okay, we're going here on consent, that's my plan.
Fine.
Is the contingency plan when they say no, are we walking away? Now, if you're rolling up with 12 cops and armored thing, is the chief going to abide by that? You know, and that's just something that's in your pre-planning.
Yeah.
You know,
It's a
aside by
pre-plan
that.
thing,
And
yeah.
that's that understanding of all we've got is consent. It's either yes or no when we go inside there. There's no exigency and doing so. So yes, the concern of how many people went to that door, how many people are standing there, are rifles slung, are we standing with our, you know, hands on our guns? Yes, those are factors to consider when we talk about, is the consent going to be voluntary?
All right, so that's absolutely true. Now, the other thing is they don't really
know that there's 12,
the AR-15s are not really at the door, right, Anthony?
Correct.
So
no, yes.
Here's the thing: the courts are always going to, not I say always, I'm talking about sane judges that actually apply the Constitution faithfully.
Remember, this is Pennsylvania.
I know it is Pennsylvania, and you know, but you guys are the main East Coast state that actually has shell carry, concealed carry, which I love you.
True.
So you know, you do make up for that. So here's the deal. The courts understand, you know, that you got this guy, he's violent. You're going to have, you know, 12 people on scene. Most people, you know, they can't be seen. They understand that you're going to have a lot of presence. Now, one of the cases I think of in my head that it's applicable to this is a bank robbery case. They basically, if I had the facts straight, but it was like, you know, there's a lot of, when you have a bank robbery, there's a lot of police presence, right? And you know, and you ask the person for consent. Let's say for whatever reason you ask the person for consent, but the courts also understand that this is not a shoplifting case, and you're going to have a lot of police presence. So they're not they're not going to necessarily ding you and be like, oh, because you have a serious felony and you have so many people on scene, which seems to be justified, you don't get consent anymore. Instead, it's totality of circumstances. Did you, you know, were you aggressive and like, hey, you know, you don't have a choice here. We need to get in, you know. Or hey, the old classic, do you want to be hit with an accessory after the fact?
Right, yeah.
You know, you talk to people like that, then yeah, you ruined it, right? But just having a lot of cops on scene, especially when it makes sense, is not going to be a deal killer. It will be an important factor, but look at the other factors. And when you told me the story, I was like, I'm good. It makes sense to have a bunch of cops with AR-15s on scene after, you know, somebody just did this to another person.
Well, even in the master and consent webinar you just had, you said that especially in situations where people are under arrest or in custody, if you're not sure about the consent, make sure they're clear. Hey, you don't have to give us consent. That would clear that up if they said that. And we all had
that's one of those
podcasts
circumstances when we teach, it's a good time to use it.
It really is a good time to use it. And you don't have to say those words, hey, you have a right to refuse. In some states, you kind of do have to use that. But in places like Pennsylvania, it's like, hey, look, it's your choice. I would love your cooperation, but it is your choice. Can we get your cooperation to take this guy in custody? He could be a danger, you know, and so forth. And if they say yes, but you know, I love what Mike said though, the pre-planning. While you're walking up to those stairs, you got to ask yourself and make sure the team knows, if they say no, are we kicking that door in? And
yeah, his answer was no, he didn't go that route. He said, we're going to back off, hold the house, and go finish the paperwork to get the warrant.
Yeah.
So that was our plan.
Good.
And that's why we had so many guys. We were basically getting ready for perimeter if we needed to hold it to get the warrant.
And that's Minnesota versus Olson, right? Minnesota versus Olson basically says if you have PC for somebody and you can contain it, right? But Minnesota versus Olson is a case where the guy was involved in a robbery gone bad and a guy got murdered, a felony murder. He wasn't the one that pulled the trigger, but his friends did. And the cops just barged in there with 8 cops and took him into custody at a third party's home, by the way. So we're actually talking about something like you. And the Supreme Court said that, hey, look, that's no go because the shooter was in custody, the gun was in custody. There's no danger to his friends who's at a friend's house like we have here. And they should have just barged in. And they should have just they had people on the outside, they had enough people to contain it and to go get the paper. In fact, I think Minnesota versus Olson is your most applicable case. Another one.
Man.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Look, you're like, thank you. Like Elvis. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
That's Elvis.
That's Elvis.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.